March 19th. Welcome to our Circle of Indigenous Empowerment webinar for today, which is self-advocacy and leadership, telling your story. We have Faith, who will be presenting. Faith had presented earlier in the month, Faith Johnson from Arizona State University. So for today, we wanted to thank you for joining us. We also wanted to let you know that to be also on mute. If you have any questions, to place them in the chat. We will be monitoring them in the chat. We do not have ASL or CART today. We did not get a request. So in addition, we wanted to say that today's session is being recorded, and all recordings and materials will be made available in the near future. And if you encounter any technical issues or challenges, please send a message in the chat to the Sonoran Center, and we'll respond right away. Again, as I said, there is no captioning, no ASL today, and we would like to do our land acknowledgement from the University of Arizona. So we respectfully acknowledge the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of Indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the Tohono O'odham and the Yoemi, also called Yaqui. Committed to diversity and inclusion, the university strives to build sustainable relationships with sovereign Native nations and Indigenous communities through education offerings, partnerships, and community service. So again, I want to thank you for joining us today, and I'll hand it off to Faith. Faith, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you. Thank you all. Hi, everyone. So, if you came to the last one previously, I was Faith Johnson as the ASU brain aging researcher. Today, I am Faith Johnson, the project director or program director. It goes either way for Arizona Achieve, which is a statewide coalition helping individuals with disabilities. And my goal is, again, to just really make sure that we are doing projects and programs that is all about advocacy. And so today, what we're going to be doing is pretty interactive. So would love if people wanted to type in the chat or unmute their mics with some of the questions that we'll be doing, because it's kind of a bit like a little workshop. And our theme today is looking at self-advocacy and telling your story. And so this is important to me because I had to learn how to advocate for myself with me being neurodivergent. And so I didn't know my story and I didn't know how to tell it. And so we're just all coming together today, just again, just learning about a little bit more about you and your why. So we could get started. So I want to acknowledge this was first written before I came on by the wonderful Ryan Berry. He's actually in law school right now doing phenomenal. And then it was also edited by Susie and Laramie, who did the illustration. So I just want to give a shout out to them. Okay. So basically, today I'm going to be really the instructor, and this is kind of like a little mini course about self advocacy. So, welcome. Okay. So, who will be today is Alex the advocate, or we can say Faith, or it could be you. So, we'll put ourselves in each other's shoes today. And so, we want to welcome you again to the world of advocacy, and we're going to talk about how to tell your story and how to speak up for yourself because everybody's voices matter and your story matters too. So, for starters, what is self advocacy? Self advocacy is when you use your voice to tell other people about how you feel, what you need, and what you want. So, it's important, here for Alex the advocate, when they discovered self advocacy, they didn't feel like they had much control over their life. And so now they have more power to make the decisions and also live independently. I can speak for myself, whereas I didn't grow up in a place where speaking, and advocating for myself was respected or needed. So I went a lot of times unheard and unseen. And when you feel unheard and unseen, you don't get your needs met, right? And you're not happy. And it's really important. And I always share that again, it starts with self advocacy. So yourself, you have to make sure that you're good and you're comfortable and that you're seen and heard. So let's go through some more. So we're going to first start about finding your story. So, what is your story? Your story is you. So again, it is about your life. It is about the twists and the turns and the amazing moments that define who you are. Or with me being a very avid book reader, I like to say it is the plot twist, it is the rise in action, the climax, fall in action of your story. Okay. So by sharing your story, this helps you open doors to knowing others and letting others get to know a little bit more about you. Similar to Alex the Advocate here, I always thought that telling my story was embarrassing or oversharing, really. And I learned that when telling about my story, my journey, primarily looking at me being neurodivergent, it has helped me be able to talk to others about how to advocate for themselves and to get accommodations and just to feel comfortable in who they are. And then this has have also led me to give opportunities to speak to you all and also do the work that I do with Arizona Achieve and even with ASU. So it's really important to open up. It is also important to know that as we are continuing to grow and to change, our story will as well. And that's okay. There might be some parts of the story that you missed before that, you felt like at first it wasn't something you were comfortable sharing with, but now you are. Or now your story has gotten even stronger. So there's a little bit more to your advocacy story as you're getting older. So that's okay. And that can happen for people, of course, who we meet, different experiences. It looks different. And I know it says here that your story looks different from a year from now, but your story can look different from yesterday. So it's okay if stuff keeps on changing. So just a little bit of pointers too, before, you advocate for yourself, you have to know your story. And basically that is, who are you? Who do you want to be? And so when you have that part there, that helps with your story, understanding who you are, and then also who you care about and what you need to be happy. So you have to tell yourself, okay, who am I? What do I desire to do? And who do I want to be? And then also what truly makes me happy. Okay. So what we're going to do now, a little activity is we're going to do some simple questions to just figure out about your story, so it will help improve your advocacy and also to know that, just question yourself, challenge yourself a little bit. Also, there's no right or wrong answers to the story. So it is, again, about you. You write your script. So I want to take about 2 minutes on the clock just to have everybody just think about these questions. And so the first question is, what makes you happy? That's very important. Also, what's the most important moment in your life? And it doesn't have to be strictly just about advocacy, but just a special moment. And also, what are your dreams and your goals? So I want to give 2 minutes for everyone to just think about that. And then afterwards, if you guys don't mind, people can unmute their mics or they can talk in the chat and share their story. And I'll also share mine as well. So I'll give you all 2 minutes to think about this. Alrighty. So thank you, everyone. I'll start first just to break the ice a little bit. So, what makes me happy? When I first did this presentation before, I actually said that what makes me happy is to speak up for myself. But my story has changed a little bit from now. And now what makes me happy is to be present. Sometimes I struggle with being in the presence because of the fact that I'm always looking in the future because there's so much going on right now. But to actually enjoying the little things in life that I sometimes miss, that actually brings me much joy. An important moment in my life, but looking particularly into advocacy, is me advocating for my degree. Something that I used to be afraid to share about is that it took me 2 years after I graduated for me to receive my degree off of a technicality, and for me to not give up and for me to speak about what happened to me, as well as speaking on behalf of people who are neurodivergent, allowed the school to see a little bit differently. And I was able to successfully defend and get my degree. So that makes me very happy. I would say my dreams and my goals currently still are to pursue my master's. I find out in 2 weeks if I get into a clinical mental health counseling program, as well as go for my doctorate in behavioral health. And so I will be able to be a sports clinician and then also focus on neurodiversity and disabilities. And then maybe soon as well to go into law school where I can help for disability rights as well as family law. So big goals and big dreams, but I would say another dream of mine would be is to have my own talk show because I like to talk a lot, as you can tell. So it's something fun. But I want to give the floor to everyone else in the chat if people said anything there, or if you would like to unmute your mic and go over these three questions. So.
Go. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, because I'm on daylight savings time. So
Hi.
it's actually 12:10 my time. So what makes me happy is being with family. And what is important, the important moments in my life is exercising and staying healthy, being happy and stress-free.
Yes.
And what are my dreams and goal is growing old gracefully and health and being healthy at 90 years old. Active and healthy at 90 years old.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I think I want to have my goals be like yours too. I think we might have
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah, because we work with a lot. I work with the independent living, and a lot of time it's just, people becoming unhealthy because of diabetes. And I see how that diabetes affects if they don't take care of themselves properly and how it affects their body and their healthy lifestyle and how it interferes with it. So with that, I want to grow old gracefully and in
Yeah.
a healthy way, being healthy, and hopefully at 90 years old I can still get around without being in a wheelchair or using a walker.
Yeah. That's an awesome goal. Thank you so much for sharing that. When anybody else, I can't see or I can see if I can pull up the chat or if anybody wants to read out the chat.
So this is Agnes. I wrote in the chat, what makes me happy is finding me time to read and enjoy quiet time and walking out about in nature. So, what was the most important moment in my life was the birth of my child and raising my daughter because I was unable to have children for the longest time. So that was a key moment in my life. And what are your dreams and goals? So my dream is to write kids' books and open an Indigenous bookstore here in Arizona. There's only a couple
Mhm.
across the United States, and the closest one I think is a comic store in New Mexico. So those are my dreams. And
Those
I don't see anybody else writing in the chat.
perfect. Thank you. I
I can
actually,
share next.
yeah.
Or Faith, if you needed to say something, that's okay too.
Oh, no, no. I was just saying I love writing. I wrote a children's book. It just has to be published. So Agnes, when you're ready to open that bookstore, you'll have a book for me. So
Yes, yes, thank you.
That's awesome. I'm excited to check out your bookstore, Agnes. I'm a huge children's book fan. So, um, hi, my name is Shauna Ikahihipo. I work at the University of Arizona at our Healthcare Simulation Center. What makes me happy is helping other undiagnosed autistic folks and neurodivergent folks who feel broken, find hope and healing by finding answers. And I'm not talking about healing the conditions that they've always had, but the healing that comes from growing up, the trauma that you have growing up not knowing what makes you different, but just knowing that you're different.
yeah.
What's an important moment in my life? Um, Kind of going along with that, spring of 2022, at the age of 33, I was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. After more than a decade of seeking treatment for what was considered medically resistant mental health conditions, which were actually just unaccommodated neurodevelopmental disability that I have had my whole life.
Mhm.
Um, that made a huge change in my progress. Prior to that moment, I had been a trained special educator who had always loved working with my autistic students, and now I finally understood why, because I found my people.
Yeah.
And so it was it was a life-changing moment for me. I also had been a very strong advocate for my younger brother who was diagnosed at 7.
Hmm.
And so to change that piece and recognize that the people that I had been advocating for in my professional role and in my private life were actually myself as well, made a huge difference. As far as my dreams and my goals, um, my major dream right now is to close the care gap that faces disabled people when entering into healthcare spaces. This is, we use healthcare more than any other group and we receive the worst outcomes. And that needs to change. There is also a lack of disabled doctors in the field, and we need more disabled healthcare providers. And as a person who works with healthcare education, it is my passion to increase the number of disabled doctors and specialists that we have available to our community, by also increasing the amount of lived experience that is added into our medical curriculum currently. Right now, we lean very heavily on medical knowledge,
Hmm.
at the exclusion of lived experience, which is a huge gap. And so that is my current goal right now is that. And then I also have a dream of writing books someday. So I love to be in community with people with similar passions because there's always a need for more words, especially the good ones.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for what you do, and thank you for sharing. That was wonderful.
I believe Kimberly had her hand up. Kimberly?
Hi, Kimberly.
Hey, Hinhini Westate. Good morning, everyone. Beautiful hearing all of everything that makes everybody happy. That's awesome to hear. What makes me happy is I'm also neurodivergent. Back in the early 70s, 1970, I'm going to say my age here, but 1971, um, you know, being brought to the Indian hospital on the reservation and having my parents being told, you're special. And that had to do with being on the autism spectrum. Back then, they really didn't have much information around Asperger's. But working through that, I'm almost 60 now and understand how things happen. And sometimes I don't understand how things happen. But I put a lot of my efforts into higher education,
Hmm.
going to college, getting master's degree. And then my grandmother, she's a granddaughter chief. She was born in a teepee. My mom was born in one of those old cavalry tents. And me, I was fortunate to be born in the old Indian hospital on the Rosebud Reservation. So several generations here go back to traditional ways. And just understanding the ways of my grandmother, and I'm actually the last yellow robe woman in our family, having people pass, those before me pass, so really have a lot of cultural expectations, not just from myself but also from the communities that I'm surrounded by,
Yeah.
continuing on those traditions and cultural etiquettes is really important as a Lakota woman. I'm full-blood Rosebud Sioux. My children are Rosebud Sioux and father's Navajo, so I call them Sujos. But I got four children, really blessed to have them. And I had them late in life when I was 33. The oldest was when I was 33. So uh, I really wanted to share. My grandmother had come to me. I took care of my grandmother, my mother, myself, and my four children. So I had four generations of Lakota women, Lakota females in my home for 4 or 5 years. And it was really awesome experience, awesome growing up with them, even though I was already grown. But my grandmother came to me one day. My Lakota name is in the palm of her hand. She always shared with me how important our naipe, our Lakota naipe, our hands are, and to always be careful of what we reach towards because our hands, I take care of my babies with them. I cook for my family. I do good things with these hands. So always careful of what we're reaching out to. But getting to the point, my grandmother told me one day when I came home from work, Dakoja, I want you to go back to school and I want you to earn one of those funny hats. I had already earned an MBA. So I was like, more school, grandmother. So I did. And I earned my doctorates from Virginia University. And I couldn't have done it without her triggering that, saying, we want you to do this. So what makes me happy is seeing my four children moving forward with their legacy of education, because that's what our ancestors wanted us to do. And if we don't have that level, sometimes those paperworks, treaties, all that is going to fly over our heads and we won't be involved. So what makes me happy is to see my children get educated. They all have had IEPs, all on the spectrum. Graduate with 4.1 from ASU, two of them, WP Carey, and my other daughter, 4.1 speech pathologist. My third child is going to school and earning veterinarian degree. My fourth child, she is Arizona State Wrestling Champ, the only Indian girl in Arizona that took fourth place at the state wrestling champ. So I have want my children to be developed. And my fourth child, my state champion, she's also going to college and she's in police studies. So when she graduates in May of 2027, she'll also earn her AA degree in police science. So that's very important for me, but it's also showing me as their mother and also as an elder and also as a future grandparent, they're going to be able to take care of themselves because that's really important for us as Lakotoans. You know, we're continual on a continual journey of education, and for them to continue their studies is very important to me. And that's part of my dreams and goals for them is to continue doing what our ancestors asked of us and live those goals, live those dreams, and meet their expectations, as well as our cultural responsibilities. So I think I shared with you, Miss Faith, my story. So Palamia, thank you for letting me share today.
Well, thank you for sharing. I know. Thank you so much. That is wonderful. We paved the way, right? When you share your story and when you advocate for yourself and you do what you do, generations, they benefit off of that. So I thank you. I know for me, I will be the first person I'm the first person in my family to get my degree. I'm the first one to come out of my family being neurodivergent. So now my little cousins who are neurodivergent don't have to go through the struggles of trying to tell their family and feel as if they're unwanted or seen or not a burden, because I've done that my part of doing the education and showing them that you can still have a wonderful, successful life. This is not a burden.
I
This is a
wanted to say,
gift.
like back in the early 70s, I reflect back on the early 70s. I was born in 67 on the reservation, grew up on the reservation, know the reservation, and also grew up on the Navajo reservation too. But, the stigmas, people calling you dumb, people calling you, oh, you're backwards, just the really negativity.
Mhm.
As you can hear me, it really stuck with me. It stuck with me so deep, it hit my ribs, you
Yeah,
know. And to be an advocate and to be a individual with a hidden disability, I guess. But
yeah,
I've never checked the disability box because I figured that, uh, the old way, we don't, my grandmother said not to bring attention to ourselves, always be proper, be faithful,
mhm,
be prayerful, and even though you do all those things, go through the actions, the stigma was still there, not just from, I grew up in a racist community, early 70s, they didn't like us Indians on the reservation or the border towns. So imagine trying to navigate as a young person with challenges, and not being able to have that type of faith or hope from the folks that are supposed to be caring for us. It was very difficult back in the early 70s to navigate through systems without being putting yourself on the radar because they were very afraid of us being taken away from them, and always remind us, you're special, you can't do that, you're special, you know. So it was really different culture back then than what we're seeing here today. So thank you for hosting us. And I definitely do want to thank Agnes for all that she does with the advocacies and all the movements that she's making.
yes.
Palamia.
Thank you. No, thank you so much. And yes, I'm happy to be here too. So again, I want to thank everybody for sharing your story, like again, because it does help everyone else, and I know it fired me up. So I'm very thankful for that. But yeah, no, we it's just it's important to think about again what makes you happy, what's in most important moment in your life, and then your dreams and goals, and that can have you just go and figure out your story from there. So it's always good to, see people also have their story. But next, I wanted to talk about when you have your story. So you have this great story, you're passionate, you're fired up. Now your voice, right? That's the hardest part of, okay, I need to use my voice and I need to talk to, who do I talk to? What do I say? So after you've explained your story, now we have to talk to people about this, right? And as we've all mentioned before who spoke, being neurodivergent in a world that is very neurotypical can be very hard to talk to them and have them understand, right? Not all, but some. So, how do we get our story across, right? How do we use our voice? So, just for a little exercise, picture your story as an island filled with wonderful memories, dreams, and experiences again. Your voice is that bridge that connects that islands to others. So, for me, I always think of it, you're doing like a timeshare. You are trying to tell people this is what is needed. This is the goal. I think Shauna mentioned before about that gap, right? That's needed to talk about with our healthcare providers and also clinicians and people that they need to hear us out as neurodivergent individuals or people who are disabled, because when you use your voice, you build a bridge that lets others be able to visit and understand and also know who you are and others. So that's why that's very important. This is something as a woman of color and neurodivergent that I really wanted to emphasize and put on here because I have to recognize and we have to recognize the hard truth that advocacy looks different when it comes to people of color and women. It does. Okay. So it's important when we're advocating, right? How our tone can be often interpreted, right? I can say, and I'm speaking statistically, that a lot of times with people of color and people who are also neurodivergent as well, we come off as very direct, right? And to some people that can seem rude or seem aggressive, right? But we're just like, nope, we're just to the point. This is what we need, but it comes off differently. And because of how we advocate, we might get a different response. So I just always like to let people know that in advance. So, for example, if we're passive, some examples of that is saying, it's okay if this can't happen, but I just wanted to ask. That's like a passive advocacy tone. Then there's passive aggressive, which is, I guess accommodations aren't really a priority here. There can be aggressive of you actually saying, you're violating my rights. Then there's assertive, whereas I'm requesting this accommodation to perform efficiently. Then there is professional neutral. According to this policy, this is a reasonable accommodation. And then there is an emotion, whereas it says this process has been overwhelming and inaccessible. But the most important part that I put under this, there is no right tone for advocacy. We don't know, and most people don't know how many times a person has said something, right? As I mentioned before, I had to advocate for 2 years after I graduated for my degree. By the time I went from passive, I was already too emotional within those 2 years. So to others, it might have seemed like, oh, she's being dramatic, she's complaining, she's all over the place. But it took 2 whole years, and I didn't tell people that, right? So in my defense, I've done it all. So we can't judge people for the way they advocate because you don't know, again, either their story or how long or how many times it took them to advocate for themselves. So I always like to mention this and also let people know is when you are advocating, you do need to know that you will get a different response based off of how you're doing it. So just be aware. There's no right tone, but again, know that there will be a different response depending on who you're advocating for. So just wanted to put that out there. So again, with bridges, right? It's important, as I mentioned before, that it who we talk to and advocate for and who we share our stories with is also just as important, right? Because when you use your voice, you're also telling people how you're feeling, what you need, and what you want. So that's a great practice for self-advocacy. But we do know that there are some people who unfortunately will take our kindness for weakness or take advantage of our story. So it's important when you're building that bridge with someone, right, that we figure out, do I trust them? And really, to me, what I do now is tell myself, do I feel safe with this person? Do I feel safe mentally? Do I feel safe physically and emotionally before I make this bridge with them? Having a great bridge or a trusted bridge oftentimes will have them listen to you and offer advice or support. And they can help you also find solutions to your problems. For example, I like to use is again my family, primarily my mom. My mom grew up in a place where I think, as Kimberly mentioned too, a very racist neighborhood, and they thought differently of people, right? And they thought down of people. But really, what it was is it was the lack of education, right? We're from Chicago, so we grew up in a little bit in the hood, and so when seeing people with disabilities or people with special needs, oftentimes they thought they were different. And we know, excuse me, unfortunately, we're in a world where if people are different, people fear that. So that's how it was. So when having a neurodivergent child, I grew up this whole time of thinking, or her thinking, what is wrong with you? Until education came in and she said, oh, okay, this is who you are. Because of the fact that we were able to come and have a trusted bridge, this was my biggest advocate on me able to get my degree that I had, because she took time to listen and finally was able to get to a safe spot. So that's my story with that. And so that's why I think it's important that you just can't automatically, when having these bridges with people, allow them to listen and understand you, because it's important. If not, they can run away with your story or accuse you or even tear you down sometimes. So your safety is important. So just echoing off a little bit more, again, just being careful about what you share and who you share it with. And because your story, again, is to protect yourself. So building those meaningful bridges are, again, just as important on how you advocate, again, for yourself. Okay, so just a little example here. If it's hard sometimes. I used to be very shy and very introverted when just speaking to people. So I have this little example here of where you can go ahead and you talk about something or important. You can say, hello, my name is. So mine will say, hello, my name is Faith. And I'm going to speak to you about my story on becoming neurodivergent and why it's important to me. And same here. You can talk about that, or you can talk about why I love anime or anything at all, just to start getting the vibes, I say the vibes right with people, to just see how they are. And again, to figure out, do they make you feel safe? I struggle with this, and I'll be honest. And I think being vulnerable and being real is needed. So staying on topic when I am passionate about a topic. And I think for anybody here who, like who mentioned before, who are neurodivergent, when we get on fire about something, we can hyperfixate on it and we won't let it go until we feel like our point is across. So I definitely am guilty of that. I think this is why I was like, maybe I should pursue law. Because again, staying on topic is a little bit hard because of the fact that I just love to go into different topics of why things match in patterns and analyze. But that's a strength of mine that works other places. But sometimes in conversations, that can be hard. But it is important to try to stay on topic and stay in focus, because then it helps people to understand you better. And like I mentioned before, individuals who are neurotypical, it might be a little bit harder for them to understand why are you connecting 8 different topics all in one together. So we want them to feel heard and needed too, just like we're talking to them. So if you can, try not to talk about things that are unrelated because they can be confusing. So try to stick to your main points. Something that I actually do, especially emails get me a lot. They do. So I like to write down first what I'm talking about, on a notes app, or if I'm sending a text, or if I know I'm going to speak to a person, sometimes I pre-plan what I'm going to say. And it helps me to stay on topic and to be focused so then they can understand what I'm saying. So you can tell yourself, or here's a little prompt that you can have and you can keep with you in your own words. Tell me why it's important for self advocates to stay on topic when speaking to others. So, just like a note to self, basically. And so, like I say, well, it's to stay focused and it's to make sure that people are understanding your point and they hear you so that there's nothing that's missing. It's also important to use I statements. I'm big on that because of the fact that it helps your message stay clear and it keeps the spotlight on you, right? Because it's self-advocacy. So you are important. So you need to tell people, I want, I need, I feel, because then it goes back to, because if you mention, well, this person did this, they're going to focus on that person, or this part they're going to focus on that part, but then it takes off of you, so now you're not getting your needs met and you're not feeling happy, and we don't want that. So being direct is actually very important in these types of situations so you can get what you need. So here you can think about something you feel strongly about, and here's just again some examples that can be used. So I feel blank. I need blank. I want blank. And again, I actually use these. This is like on my little notes app. So if something happens, a conflict at work, friendship, anything at all, I have these 3 sentences that I can have and I can write down so I can get my point across so people can feel it. Or sometimes I am verbatim and I tell people, listen, I'm struggling to use my words, so I'm just going to read off verbatim. I feel this, I need this, and I want this. And it's either they get it or they don't. So it is important again to make sure you know what is needed for you and you say I, because if not, people are not going to focus on you. Listening and responding. So yes, it is just as important as you speaking to individuals about what you want and what you need and what you are feeling. It's important to listen to them as well. So then you can figure out, okay, was there something that was misinterpreted? Or maybe they gave a solution to something and now you can figure out, okay, does this actually work? Can this accommodate me? Can we come to a common ground? And it's also just important because, you can give them their respect too, just as they given you. So again, responding to what they said, and it shows that you also understand and you respect their thoughts as well, right? So one of the things that you can just think about, or a little prompt, is imagine that your friend has told you that they are nervous about a big test tomorrow. How would you respond? And that has happened to me multiple times. Being a neuroscience and cognitive science major, I've been on both sides of my friends saying they're nervous about a test, and then me telling them that I'm nervous about a test. And how I often responded was just, telling them again what I was doing to help myself prepare. So whether that was meditating, or for me, looking in my Bible, or, taking a walk, and then also listening to what they like to do to decompress and telling them, well, have you journaled? Did you go get your favorite ice cream? Did you talk to that person? And kind of seeing that too, because then that shows I'm also actively listening to them. And I'm also trying to advocate for their needs and for them to be able to um, get what they want so they can feel happy. So it's important that we have to give and take when it comes also to advocacy. Another thing too that I used to struggle with a lot is the why, right? I say I want, I need, I feel, but why is this making me feel this way? And I was a why kid when I was younger, and I would stress everybody out because of the fact that I always need to know why someone was doing something, but I couldn't tell it myself. So it is important that you are explaining why when you feel and you need again or want something, because again, it helps them understand you better and it sticks with them, or hopefully, right? And it does also add that support to what you're saying. And especially when we're talking about advocacy, because it also helps others see your perspective. So For a statement, you can say, this is important to me because. It is important. This is important to me because when speaking about neurodiversity, because of the fact that for myself and for my family members who are neurodivergent, it's really important that, for example, that we have the accommodations that are needed for us, such as making sure we have earplugs because sometimes it can be very noisy. For example, it was 4th of July. I grew up not liking fireworks at all, so I was definitely the party pooper for people in my family. But then I learned that I just need earplugs. And when I have earplugs, I'm happy, everybody's calm, and they also need earplugs as well so everybody can enjoy the show. So that was my way of advocating. And when they asked me why, I explained to them. For me, I have different sensory preferences. So what might not be loud to you is extremely loud to me. And when it's very loud to me, it often makes me feel overstimulated. That can result in crying or result in me just not feeling good. They understood, and now we all come to a common ground. So, just an example of why sometimes you need to explain so people can have a different perspective. Okay, another part that I added with advocacy that is a little different is how I mentioned before, ethical advocacy. So, some awareness that I mentioned before that needs to be talked about always, I'm not shy about talking about it, is that again, women and people of color are often labeled when advocating emotional, aggressive, dramatic, and difficult. And all of these have been told to me before. So, but our responses look a lot different again when we are advocating because unfortunately, advocacy for us can affect our employment, our housing, education, even healthcare, which was mentioned before, right? And also, too, a lot of us are silent. Sometimes, yeah, we don't select on the jobs that we have a disability or we need accommodations or anything at all, or we don't speak up for ourselves and we become meek because we don't want the repercussions with it, right? And I want people to know too, because sometimes people feel bad or guilty of doing that, but it's a strategy. It's not a weakness. We all need to survive here. There's a lot going on in this world. And so, again, that's advocating for yourself saying, hey, unfortunately, this happened and I didn't get this accommodation or I need it. But right now it is between that or my bills or me being homeless or me not eating or my family. So this is what I'm going to have to do. And sometimes, unfortunately, those are the types of decisions that are needing to be made, which are not bad, but just something to talk about. So, some common labels, unfortunately, that are within marginalized disabled advocates, again, are the too emotional, or you're unprofessional, or you're aggressive, or you're difficult, or my favorite with having ADHD is like your mind is all over the place, but it's just we see things differently and we know how to connect it differently than typical people. So we try to find always the shortcuts for things. So it can look different. So I always want to give that out to people because I know a lot of times when people are talking about advocacy, they miss this part about the ethical experience when being an advocate and how there will be repercussions, unfortunately, that look different than other peers. So I wanted to provide a little bit of tips for this. So, choosing strategy over immediacy. This is something I truly had to train myself and learn. Not everything needs a 24-hour response, if it can, if it's not like super urgent or emergency, right? So take your time with stuff. I like to do it if it's something that's going to really bother me, overstimulate me, and it's not going to put anybody in harm's way or mess up anything, I give it about 48 hours. You again, because you don't have to respond in the moment. So you can also ask for time. Give me a second to think about this so I'm not impulsive in my thoughts, right? Also, advocating and writing whenever is possible. Legally, right? Everything is can be legally binding when you are sending an email, when you're sending a text. So having advocacy and writing stuff because it can help with the clarity and also reduce tone policing as well, because sometimes people see an email and they think you're being aggressive on there, but sometimes you're not. You're just speaking directly. So, and also you can provide documentation. With that trusted bridge that we talked about before, it's important because bring backup when available. I knew with my degree that I was going to need more than myself to advocate for this. So I brought in my mom, I brought in someone who's also an advocate and an attorney, and we were all able to figure out together because they knew me and we provided that safe space there. So it's important because then it increases accountability for people, right? Also, disengage when advocacy becomes unsafe. Again, you are all you have, right? So if it doesn't feel safe, if you are constantly getting overly stimulated and stuff like that, leave or just back up if you need to, right? Because that's a form of self-protection. It is not failure. It is not you being weak. It is not you giving up. It is making sure you are safe. That is advocacy. Okay? Working on this one, right? Choosing your battles. Not every battle has something to be said, right? We cannot change people, and that's something I'm learning, right? We cannot change people at all. Some people, some bosses, some family members are going to be that way, and we have to choose to allow them still to be here because that's just how life goes. So every fight with them, it's not going to matter, right? And how your boss thinks or how people think. It is what it is. So if it's not, you got to tell yourself, is it hurting me? Is it harming me? Is it really truly making me miserable? And if not all three or at least two of the three, then if this is something that can be changed or addressed at another time, wait, right? So because not every issue is worth your time or your energy or also your risk. Okay. But just know again, your voice is valid and your boundaries are ethical. So, again, your story is yours, but just a few tips. Okay. So, for the sake of time, I'm just gonna have everybody look this over for a minute, and then if we can have maybe if you want two or three people wanting to share. And for what I do when I go into the in-person workshops, basically you can find a partner, or again, what we're gonna do is practice on your own. You can select a topic. So you can do a favorite birthday, meaningful friendship, favorite place, family tradition, or proud accomplishment. And then you tell yourself or that person, like, hello, my name is blank, and I'm going to speak to you about blank and why this is important to me. So, for example, mine would be, um, hello, my name is Faith, and I'm going to speak to you about a meaningful friendship and why it's important to me. And I will talk about it because I have an amazing best friend who is neurotypical, and her being able to learn about my condition and her being now able to help support and advocate when things are happening, or just being just very supportive towards me allows me to feel safe and allows me to see people differently, and it shows me truly that people can come and understand one another, condition or not. So that's important to me. So would anybody else like to share or try?
This is Agnes. I'll try.
Mhm.
So, hello, my name is Agnes Atakai, and I'm going to speak to you about making blue corn mush and why it's important to me. It's a great family tradition where my daughter and I get together and use a recipe that's been handed down by my grandmother, and it is a very nutritious dish that really nourishes our soul and nourishes our body.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Would anybody else like to share?
I'll try it.
Awesome.
Hi, my name is Pam Shields, and I'm going to speak to you about scuba diving and why it's important to me. I found when I got first scuba certified, when my oldest son retired from the Army when I was 66, that I can see why people use this as a PTSD outlet because it is so calming and relaxing once you're under the water.
Mhm.
And then I got my advanced open water uh, scuba diving with others besides the small little 4 people that I took my classes with.
Mhm.
And it is just so relaxing. And the things that you can see under the water, it's like, everybody's familiar with what we can see above the water, but it's so important to keep our waters clean and safe and things like that because you know, we need that water and it's just awesome. It's
Yeah.
breathtaking.
Thank you. Thank
Yep.
you. Thank you. Kimberly?
Yeah, my name is Kimberly Yellerobe, and I'm going to share a topic from a family tradition and it's cultural. I shared with you my family's history. My
Hmm.
grandfather, my great grandfather were sun dancers, and we didn't have any males in our family that could continue that tradition. So my grandmother, again, triple dog challenge, she comes to me and says, "Granddaughter Takoja, we'd like for you to go to Sundance and bring the chanupa, the sacred pipe, back into our family." So that's my family tradition, and really proud to have accomplished participating in our sacred Sundance ceremony and being a chanupa carrier, a pipe carrier here, living in the city, and being able to lend that chanupa when folks need prayers to come and share those sacred prayers with them. So Palami again, Miss Faith, it's been awesome sharing with you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for teaching me more about some more traditions, both of you guys. Thank you. All righty. Thank you all for sharing. Okay. So we're getting to the end of things. So here afterwards, again, reviewing again those checklists. It's a little quick checklist if you guys want to take a picture or anything, to think about if you followed each step. And so it's important if you want to, practice with friends and family members. Again, did you introduce yourself? Did you have your points across to make sure you can stay on topic? Are you using I statements? Did you explain why? And then, really important is, did you listen and did you also respond to the individual talking to you as well? So these are all something that you can practice when trying to advocate and to tell your story. And then afterwards, what I like to do after doing all these 5 steps is the 5 high-fiving someone to let them know, hey, I answered everything that I needed to do in my checklist. Okay. So again, I want to tell everyone, great job. Thank you for all those who were participating and everyone here. Again, making sure that you can check off your checklist. And again, if you didn't also check out all 5 of those when you start practicing, that's not a problem too, because again, we're always going to be learners and working in progress. Okay. So we're just here to learn and grow together with each other and just learn about each other as well. You'll be shocked to hear people's stories and their voices. If you just assume something about them and then when you hear their story and why they're so passionate about advocating, it might change your mind. So that's why it's important to listen and learning from people. Okay, so again, just a little bit of notes again, if you wanted to just practice on your own time. Again, you can talk about, again, a part of your story of what you want to share about and also who you would like to share it with. So if you wanted to jot down a couple of people to practice with, or even a group, and then you can practice that way about telling your story until you eventually make it to the specific type of person or organization or thing you want to go forth and talk about your story too. So just a little example. Okay, so it is important, as I mentioned before. I'm going to briefly go over this, and then I'm happy to send this part out to anyone who needs it, of where to file a complaint. If, again, we talked about work and also ethical advocacy and different responses, right? So, what happens if you are treated unfairly and discriminated against? Well, here are five different organizations that you can file your complaints to in case something was to happen or you need more additional support. Because again, it is important when you are self-advocate does not mean you have to do things by yourself. You just care about yourself and you're talking about yourself. But it's very important to have others come and help you too. Okay. So here are five different types of organizations and companies that will help you. And I'm just keep this here for a little bit. But again, please feel free to reach out to me or Agnes if anybody does need anything. Let me know, shoot me an email, and I can send this over if people want this part. Also, again, support. Here are support organizations. We have the ARC of Arizona, which I'm under, as well as Arizona Achieve, which is a coalition. We have the Arizona Statewide Independent Living Council. We have the Arizona Technology Access Program. We have Disability Rights Arizona. And then we also have Raising Special Kids, but I think they changed the name. So we'll change that if you guys need this one with their updated name. But here are some amazing organizations, and there's plenty more too here in Arizona. But these are specifically some few of support organizations that you guys can all come to and want to help out with. Here again is a little bit of a map of some of the independent living centers that's needed. And then those are community-based organizations that help people with disabilities live independently. So if you need more assistance or anything, these are a few of the organizations that can help. And here are again some of their informations if need be. Again, more than happy to send this out to anyone afterwards, or I can just stay back so you can see this part. And again, this is the end. Again, great job, everyone. I want to thank you all for staying with me, talking for a whole hour, and just being super engaged and sharing your story and letting me share my story with you all. So it has been a pleasure. That is my email here. Feel free to contact me, talk to me, or if you just want to just chat, I love to talk. So I'm happy to help. If there's any resources I can provide, happy to do that as well. And I look forward to seeing you all soon at somewhere or someplace. And just please be proud of yourself, because even coming here today is you doing the work and putting yourself first and wanting to find your voice and use advocacy. So thank you. Thank you, Agnes. Thank you, everybody, for letting me be a part of this with you all.
Faith, thank you very much for this really engaging webinar and training, and I really appreciate this. So we do have some upcoming webinars of interest that you may think of. I put them in the chat. We have Finding Balance with Federal, State, and Tribal Benefits with Nicholas Love on April 8th, and then Employment Supports Through Disability Benefits 101, also with Nicholas Love on May 13th. We have our 6th annual Native Indigenous Youth Disability Summit, which is virtual on April 11th. There's a link. So please let and share this with Indigenous youth. We are also seeking nominations for our Jim E. Warren Tribal Youth Leadership Award. So this award is for a youth demonstrates leadership qualities and personal strengths that help them overcome adversity in their community. So the nominations are due tomorrow, March 20th. So they will be acknowledged during the virtual summit and get a plaque. So please, if you know of a deserving youth, please nominate them. So again, Faith, very much thankful for your presentation. And if you have any other trainings you're interested in sharing with our group, please reach out. We can do additional more. I think it was really helpful for me to write down and talk about what I'd like to share and then what I'm really grateful for. So it really helps me out as well. So
Hey, thank you. No, thank you all. You guys have actually changed my little advocacy stories too about what I want in life. I was going for the careers, and I'm like, no, actually, I like to write, and I like to do this, and I like to, I want to grow to 92. So yeah.
Yes, that really put it in perspective too. And I apologize for folks that wrote in the chat too about what makes people happy. Pam brought up the scuba diving as well, and Benita talked about family. Jim talked about family as well. So there was a lot of discussion in the chat as well. So I appreciate you guys interacting with this webinar and really being reflective of some of the activities we have. So again, Faith, thank you very much. And the recording will be made available. So if Faith, you want to send us information that you want us to share with the group, we will share it with the folks that registered for the webinar today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you all.
Again, thank you very much, folks.
Thank you.